Entrepreneurship is really not the life for everyone because, being like a founder, it's like, yes, like you are able to control your own destiny in a lot of ways. You call the shots in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it's also everything is your responsibility. Like you never are off.
Meet Jessica Lee, founder and CEO of Modern Citizen.
You can't force someone to love you overnight. You know what I mean? Like that kind of like connection to a brand and like what you wear and like, those types of things are built like really over like years and decades. It can't be that short of a window. You only have a real business if there's a market for your business, meaning like, are there people out there who care about the product that you're making, that understand what you're doing, that want to support that business? I think a lot of times people actually encourage you to not be so vulnerable in your conversations with people, not show your weaknesses. I have a very different view of that. For me, success is like by my own metrics, not somebody else's metric. And so that to me is like ultimately the most sustainable thing that you can do for a business in terms of it feeling like a marathon, not a sprint.
And motherhood, like we've talked about before, it's such a big, thoughtful, beautiful, draining job. How you've traversed that type of intentionality in a business and being a mom.
I think my number one advice to people who are trying to juggle both is like,
Jess, I'm so glad to have this conversation because you are so inspiring to me. You've built something. You built something of value and meaning and beauty. You're the CEO and co-founder of Modern Citizen.
Yep.
Luxury. Would you call yourself a luxury brand?
Yeah, I think depending on how you define luxury, for sure.
I think
if
for me,
if it's not solely by price, then yes.
Okay, a luxury clothing brand based in San Francisco. Brick and mortar. I can't wait to hear your story. And I know that, optically that's all amazing, but there's very unamazing steps that happened getting you
Mostly
there.
unamazing steps.
Mostly the grind.
Yeah.
And those are kind of like the untold stories behind these things. Yeah. They probably shaped you. They probably shaped how you think about the world and motherhood and partnership. And so I just would love to get into all things and just kind of hear your expertise and where you thrive and where you may have failed and just have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds great.
Cool.
Excited.
Yeah. I think when I first was doing my initial research on the background, it really stuck out to me that you did not take VC money when that was like all the rage to do is like start something, be well-funded, create a safety net. You didn't do that. One, as much as I glamorize that, is that something you stand by? It was like still the best decision. Why did you make that decision? Like, I'm so curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that, now looking back in hindsight, it was the right decision for us, but I would qualify that by saying it's not the right decision for everyone. So I think, thinking about our category, I think, e-commerce and retail specifically, or any kind of retail business, like whether it's fashion or something else where you're producing a physical good, moving a physical good, at the end of the day, it's not a software business, in other words, right? There was a period of time where like, D2C, direct to consumer, that was like, very hot kind of like in the VC world. A lot of people were raising money against that, and traditional fashion brands that, are still producing a physical good, moving a physical good, just selling it online first versus like maybe in other channels first. We're raising at, values that like, for me, I saw it from the other side. So my background before starting Modern Citizens, I worked at Gap Inc. So I worked in a much like larger kind of like, Fortune 500 company, doing mostly business strategy work and like corporate strategy. And part of like what I was doing was actually looking at business targets for the company to acquire for our online portfolio. And a lot of the businesses that we looked at that time, like were very much like in that, D2C 1.0 era, like the Nasty Gals of the world, like Bonobos, like those types of businesses. And, like a variety of them had actually like different kind of financing structures. But I think ultimately what struck me, like coming from the strategic side of things, like the potential acquirers, was that the valuation expectations were actually very different. So the investors who were putting money into those businesses were expecting valuation multiples that looked more like software businesses, maybe not quite as high as software businesses, but definitely higher than you would typically see in a more like traditional business like fashion or like CPG. So I think that was already the immediate mismatch, was just seeing these businesses that were, they were of size. They were like $100 million in sales, but we're expecting $1 billion exit. And the universe of acquirers who actually would acquire an asset like that at $1 billion is basically zero. It just doesn't exist for good reason, because businesses don't scale in that same way. So I think that that's something that I kind of like already knew fundamentally really early on, that like that sort of like telling yourself that story or like your like likelihood to achieve that kind of like outcome was basically impossible, was one piece of it. The other piece of it actually for me was more that like seeing how these businesses were run, a lot of the ones who raised money very early, maybe even before they actually even had a physical product, made me kind of realize that sort of like you can actually use venture in ways that are really like meaningful, like help scale your business, get to like go to market faster, or, you know, if you're like in software and other like categories where you're really trying to box out every other competitor, you know what I mean? Like you really are trying to like be first to market and capture market share. That's important, right? Like to be able to have money to build that speed that you ordinarily couldn't do that. In fashion, you're already in a very crowded market. You producing a sweater like, you know, 5 times faster than your like next competitor actually really isn't that much of a competitive advantage. If anything, I think it actually is like detrimental in a category like that, because like brands in this space, I think, are built over time. Like the lore of like a Nike or any of these brands that have been like legacy Gap, you know, even like that have been legacy businesses for decades, like that is a slow burn. It's not a like, you know, quick one and done type of thing. And you have seen like brands, I won't name any specifically, but there's been brands that have like come into the space like, very
telepathically
quickly.
we know the brand.
I mean, we all know, you know, like you can see the headlines kind of thing that have like come in and out of favor so quickly. They kind of like, you know, burn their star so bright and then like crash and burn. And I think that that's also like, it's not just a function of the way that they were financed and the expectations of like, you know, their investors, but I think it's also really just like the consumer like appetite for that. It's like, you can't force someone to love you overnight. You know what I mean? Like that kind of like connection to a brand and like what you wear and like, you know, those types of things are built like really over like years and decades. As I think the brand also itself like finds its voice. You know, so like being able to kind of actually deliver on your promise or the vision of your brand takes more than a year. It takes more than like a creative like exercise with an ad agency to come up with like a brand and branding and like build the website and like, you know, ship out your first product to get people to fall in love with you and to like care about you. You know, like it can't be that short of a window. So I think that that's like just that mismatch of expectations in terms of what like the life cycle of like a business or a brand like that is not a fit for venture, in my personal opinion. I think that now, like with hindsight, like a lot of people agree with that perspective. At
it's probably controversial at the time.
Oh yeah, it was like very radical, especially being a business built in San Francisco. Because I think that if you're in any other market, you're building a fashion business in like LA or New York, like it's not really like an expectation that you would raise, especially for a creative business, right? Like not something that like is traditionally done, actually. I think that is something that like really Silicon Valley kind of like led, or like venture, I would say led. Not to say that like, you know, businesses in New York didn't raise money. It's more just that like there's this culture of like, that's a step that you take to build any business, is to raise money. And I think for me, like I realized that like that kind of, that amount of like cash in the bank really early on would probably lead us to making the wrong decisions. Yeah, because of like the pressure just to grow and not really be thinking very thoughtfully about how we actually wanted to grow. And I also just quite frankly wasn't really interested in like having a business that just was running losses, right? Like you were like losing money to grow, you know what I mean? That was like not really building a real business, because ultimately like you only have a real business if there's a market for your business, meaning like, are there people out there who care about the product that you're making, that understand what you're doing, that want to support that business? If you're propping that up with venture and not making money on every customer you acquire, and like, you know, that's just like, it's a race to the bottom basically. And so like, I actually just didn't want to like spend my time doing that. I think I said to my business partner, who also is like my co-founder and co-CEO now, Lizzie, like in the very beginning, we were like, we don't want to waste our time working on something that nobody wants. You know what I mean? We have this vision for what, you know, which like sounds like a stupid thing to say, but in reality, sometimes people don't ask that question.
People do it.
Exactly. And I think for us, we're very much like, we have this vision of like what we think is exciting that we want to build. And if we don't have a customer at the end of the day, if there's no market for this, we'd rather not waste our time continuing to build it. You know what I mean? Because we're not in the business of like, we're not here, like our purpose isn't like to like raise money and like be like lauded for that, or to like be like chasing that. Like our business is to like make connections with customers and like build a brand for like this customer that like we're excited about serving. And if she like doesn't like what we're doing, then like we probably shouldn't be doing it. You know what I mean? So I think for a number of different reasons, like we decided not to raise venture. And then I will say, which is like, again, maybe a more like, just like keeping it 1,000, like keeping it real. At the time, our options to raise money weren't good. You know, even though both she and I had actually come from fashion backgrounds, we saw many other people raising money who had not come from fashion, but maybe who had come from tech or had come from venture, you know, whatever, had much easier access to capital than we did.
Why? Because would you say,
I think that some of that,
because you're a minority?
I think probably all of that, to be honest, is true. I'm not saying that that's like the sole reason, certainly.
No, I mean, it's real though. It's
real. It's a bias. We were also first time founders. So to be fair, there also is that. I mean, we definitely saw, again, a profile of person that like had all those same criteria.
We know.
Just happened to be a man or happened to be like something else that like, and had no experience in fashion, still raised more money than us. But we were just like clear eyes about it, regardless of like the because I'm not comparing ourselves to anybody else. It was more just like our ability to like raise money and access capital was not simple.
Right.
Like, and we had offers that were out there. They were terrible though. It's like, we'll give you $1 million for 30% of your business. And I'm like, $1 million, while it sounds like a lot now, it's actually really nothing in the grand scheme of things. And 30% is quite a lot for something I don't know how to value now because I haven't built it yet.
Right.
So I think just like at the time, you know what I mean? Like the way that seed investments were working, like the kind of like values and sort of like, you know, ratio like of dollars relative to like ownership that we could expect as first-time founders and people who weren't like, even though they were well-connected. Both my business partner and I went to Stanford. I went for undergrad, her for business school. It's not as though we like didn't know people in that network, but it wasn't like we were getting like amazing offers. You know what I mean? In terms of like the terms, as well as even just like kind of interest in it. So I think for us, we were like, listen, like that's also like not why we're doing it. So let's go back to our own North Star. What's our definition of success? Like our definition of success is if like we can build it brick by brick. And like the reason we can keep the lights on is because we have customers.
Right.
Like who actually care about what we're doing.
And that kind of business can weather a lot more than the thing that blows up and hits a spike, and then you have to maintain that bar because you had one viral something or a ton of money in the bank one day. Yeah,
it builds a resilience too, I will say. I think we didn't know that year one.
Yeah.
But year 5, so we started in 2015. When year 5 rolled around and COVID happened, you know, I think that really showed like a true test for so many different types of founders, whether you're funded or not, about, you know, how do you manage in a situation like that where like the world is falling apart basically, and like everything you could have like counted on or like planned for really like goes left.
Right.
And I think the most resilient businesses, the ones who could survive that, had built that like agility muscle, which is very hard to do. You know, if you're in a business that like, again, you're spending a ton of money on customer acquisition, you're actually not profitable on first order, right? And then that like is a house of cards. Like it will crumble very quickly with even just the slightest external pressure.
Right.
Versus for us, it's like we're like used to, you know, on a day-to-day basis, we're making $1 out of 15 cents like every day. And so then when like hard shit happens and like stuff comes from the left and we like gotta like boogie right kind of thing, it's like we kind of know how to zigzag because like we've never known anything else.
Yeah.
So that, all that being said though, going back to what I said in the beginning of like, this is for some people and not for some people, that's not the life for everyone. I gotta say, do you know what I mean? Like not, and so is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is really not the life for everyone. I have so many people reach out to me from like undergrad and things like that, thinking about wanting to start a business. And like, I like really implore them mostly just to ask themselves why.
Yeah. Like soul search, my
girl. Like, because, you know, being like a founder, it's like, yes, like you are able to control your own destiny in a lot of ways. You call the shots in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it's also everything is your responsibility. Like you never are off. Do you know what I mean? And also like, you know, when stuff like this happens, like it's on your shoulders to like kind of figure out how you're going to navigate through that. And that that life is really not for everyone. And the life of doing it in a bootstrapped way is like truly not for everyone. I will say it's like a lot of pain and it's way harder. Because you have to see your peers around you, people who raise money, like people who did other, like, you know, whatever.
Just like waving to you.
As they surpass your growth because they have more access to capital, more access to for inventory, like for growth, like for all these things. It's like you have to be really patient and kind of like bite your tongue and like wait your time. And as a person who's like very ambitious, like, and like does want to build like big, interesting things, like it's hard.
Yeah.
You have like a tenth of the resources. But your customer thinks you're the same.
Yeah.
You know, the customer who's shopping you and your competitor brand or anybody else like in the kind of industry around you thinks that you're like the same thing. And so they expect the same level of service, expect the same level of execution.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have like 1/10 of the people and like, you know, like a 100th of the budget, right? So it's like, it's a very difficult thing for most people to be able to navigate through.
Do you feel like you were able to leverage that scrappy founder story as an asset early on? Because was that something that kind of felt like you didn't want to touch? Because when I started my business, I wanted to very much be like, I'm a mom in San Francisco. Like I wanted to lead with the vulnerability of it because I felt like I got a little more grace in that. But I was also really vulnerable to say, hey, by the way, like we're not like them. We're scrappier. Like my apartment is my studio. You know, like
I'm the one answering your customer.
Yeah, I'm the one answering.
Yeah. I'm packing your box. Yeah.
Did you lean into that in the early days, or was that a little too dicey? Like, oh, that's exposing us a little too much.
You know, I think that's something that like, I don't even think we really considered as something to kind of put out there, not because we were embarrassed by it or by any means. It was more just because we had like no time. Like we had literally like no time to think about it. I think generally speaking, like, you know, the reason we named the business Modern Citizen is because like, it's like an homage to the customer.
Right.
Like we very much wanted it to like reflect the customer and not be so much about any one person, like regardless like of like us as like founders.
A citizen can look any different way.
I mean, like it's like the name actually is kind of like an homage to like again, the who we think our idealized version of our customer is, a modern woman, citizen of the world. Like that's like kind of who she is. We want to reflect her name because we're exalting her in like everything that we do. Like what we're like making, what we're creating is like really for this like idealized version of this customer that we want to support with like what we create. So I think that for us has always kind of been number one. You'll see that like both myself and my business partner, Lizzie, like we really are very like not forward facing. Like we're very behind the scenes. Like the vast majority of the time I will do like a podcast occasionally, you know, for friends or like whatever, just because like I think it's like interesting to have like a bit of self-reflection, because like I don't often get to do that either as a founder, where you're like just grinding constantly. But I think like we've just never thought to actually put ourselves out there at all. So I think like that's actually like really where it stems from. Less so that like we didn't want to specifically talk about this part of our story, but more just that like, you know, I think where we're most vulnerable in sharing it is really with like other founders. And with people who like seek our advice with our team, you know what I mean? Like we're very much like very clear eyes about kind of like what's going on in the business. Like, and you know, if I'm talking to a fellow founder about like a problem, like we are very open to sharing. I know there was like a question, you know, what we had talked about before about like what has kind of gone against the grain. I think a lot of times people actually encourage you to not be so vulnerable in your conversations with people, not show your weaknesses, not kind of like, you know, share information with competitors or like, or quite frankly, see everyone as competitive. I have a very different view of that. For me, I'm kind of like, we're all e-commerce businesses that are like, at the end of the day, like we're all competing with like Zara. Do you know what I mean? And like it's like these like huge businesses. Like I don't see direct to consumer competitor over there as like my competitor. I see us as like rising tide lifts all boats. Like if we can rise the tide of like getting people more comfortable buying things directly online for a brand that they haven't seen in a store, or like that don't have stores, like, you know, that kind of thing, like the better that we all will
celebrate uniqueness. Like I've walked into many weddings wearing the same Zara dress. Someone else. You don't want to be that girl.
But you know, like, I mean, just like, exactly. Like, it's like when you win, like we win kind of thing. And so I think for me, like even other people, like I have so many friends who are founders who are like in the same category, selling apparel or like selling like similar things. And like, we share notes. I'm like, oh, like how much did it cost you guys this month to do this? Like, did this like thing impact you guys like on this channel? Like what's like the next thing you guys are thinking about doing? You know what I mean? And I share, like, I'm like, absolutely like just tell the truth and like share everything that's going on. Cause I think that vulnerability like pays back tenfold. More so than like trying to treat everybody as like your competitor, like something you're doing is like so secret. I'm like, you know, so we're all making clothes. Like this isn't like we're curing cancer. You know what I mean? It's not that serious. It's not that deep. You know,
the one that I felt like in the apparel world was a little bit like close to the chest was like manufacturing a bit, because it's a grind to find the right one. Then negotiate the price, and then there's price comparison. Is there a part that you feel like you really rein in when it comes to like, this is our secret sauce though?
No, to be honest, because at the end of the day, a lot of the factories that we work with especially are family businesses, and we want them to succeed too.
Totally.
Like we don't want to keep business from them if like, you know, and we're making different things. Like at the end of the day, it's like, we're not like, you know, making carbon copies of the same thing. Like, you know, a black sweater is a black sweater, but like, it's different, you know, too. It's like, you're like, you have your own version of that and your own spin of that. So if somebody asked me for like a referral, like I would like probably ask the factory first if they were interested. But then like, I don't believe in gatekeeping stuff like that. Cause I think to me, again, that just like, it's like an abundance mindset versus like a, you know, like
a scarcity
mindset, you know what I mean? And I prefer to have an abundance mindset, cause I've just seen that pay back so much more. Like when you're open and vulnerable, people tend to match your energy with that. And then the people who don't, it's like, then you kind of like know who to like steer clear from. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, who,
it's reflected in their brand strangely. Like
I would agree.
I don't
with
know.
that.
It's almost
you
like
can tell
how dogs look like their owner situation.
Yes, you can tell.
You can tell, and you can tell because even in small ways, when you see like a retail or e-com event and all these like amazing brands, they're all like all the beautiful founders are like drinking wine together, and then there's like the one that only puts like their keynote speaker picture on stage, and I'm sad for them that they can't embrace that. That type of
because that's like what gets you through it.
That's what gets you through it.
Like the camaraderie of like doing it and like recognizing how hard it is, and like also like helping each other. Like that's what gets you through it. Like I mean, community, like in every sense, like kind of gets you through that. So like finding your community, and like who better to like be your community than people who are doing exactly the same thing that you are, struggling with exactly the same things. So I think like I've always just like had that mentality of like, the more the merrier, kind of like, again, like your success is like our success, like kind of thing. Like I just like, I want to see that for everyone. I want to have that mindset around everything and not like keep things so precious, because I don't think it actually helps. To be on an island, it doesn't help.
I mean, truly the idea of shopping small and buying once and buying well, like if that thrives, modern citizen thrives.
Absolutely.
And like you said,
people willing to take a chance on something that's like indie. Right. Like that, like I want your indie brand to thrive, because like I want more people to kind of like move their share of wallet away from things that like are just like mass and like, you know, like that kind of thing. Not to say that that's bad either. It's not that I don't buy like those brands too. It's more of just like being able to take a chance on something that like maybe is like a little bit more unknown. If like they do it with your brand, like, like my chances are only better of like being able to kind of convince them to do the same kind of thing. So yeah, I just like, I see it as like much more, there's like more abundance than there is scarcity.
When you think about what category, you know, I said, are you luxury? It's like, well, how do you define that versus what would you say the antithesis of that is fast fashion? I mean, which, you know, it is fast fashion is what it is. It's funny because it has quite a negative connotation. Sure. Yeah. But then everyone's out there buying it. Like, even if you're like judging it, you're still like, oh, I have a wedding, I should jump on the site, you know, it's like,
so I get it. It's the accessibility of it.
It's the accessibility of it. It's the overnight shipping. It's, I don't even know.
Yeah.
How have you looked at where you want to be seen? Cause I'm sure you weren't like, never call me fast fashion. Well, maybe you did. Like, what was like, how did you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think coming from the industry, I don't see fast fashion as like a dirty word. Cause like the word fast as it applies to it, like really references like the supply chain.
Right.
So like how quickly can you kind of go from development, meaning like having an idea to like an actual like product that's been executed and like ready to purchase.
Yeah.
And really the people who pioneered that were like the Zaras and H&Ms of the world, right? Like those kind of like what they would traditionally call like the original fast fashion players. And then now we have people like Shein and Temu that like are like taking that to like a billionth like degree.
Yeah. But we all got our mini shirts in the mail.
Yeah. In terms of like how fast and how like, you know, much. But I think that inherently the word fast isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's like just your speed to market. And like, I think every company in the world now realizes you have to be fast about kind of everything, like not just development, but like that. So I don't inherently think it's bad. I think like where we actually run into issues is sort of like a fast, like by any means necessary, meaning like, you know, you're buying
human
something.
rights.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, or it's like at the end of the day, like if you're buying something like a dress, for example, for $10 and you're overnight shipping it from across the world, like
you gotta,
someone has suffered as a result of that combination of things. Yes. Like it doesn't, you know what I mean? It may not be like immediately obvious. And like, yes, there is like scale to take in mind and like all this other stuff. I'm not saying that like those like economies of scale don't like exist and they're not all bad, but like there is something about that. Do you know what I mean? That like that combination of things that like, I think that's the level of like comfort that we should like maybe be questioning a bit more of like, oh, like when you're consuming this thing, like, how did that like ability for it to be again like at this price at this speed, like what really went into that? Just having consumers question that a bit more. In terms of how we like to be positioned, you know, like we're also like fast in the sense that like, you know, we respond to trend, you know what I mean? Like we actually like develop on like a like less than a year cycle in terms of like, you know, what we're offering to the customer, because we want to be kind of closer to the market, understand like where trend is landing as we're about to bring inventory in, because we don't want to put stuff in the world that no one wants. Right. So we obviously want to be like close to kind of like the ground in terms of where that is. But so that's how we're fast. But I think in terms of like what we offer, you know, like in a fashion business, you have to have newness. That is just something that is like a kind of a cardinal role. Like, but how much newness is also like
seasons,
a choice.
Are we talking?
Yeah. Is it like, you know, your new arrivals page is 3,000 products every week? Or is it like where we are, which is kind of more like 50 to 100 products a month?
Right.
And I think that cadence, it really has to match like your customer, like what your customer is looking for, like what's their level of like interest. I think that for us, because we're serving like a working professional woman, like she's not like, while she's probably online shopping at her desk like a lot of days of the week.
Or like after her kids go to sleep, like while she's like
on her iPad.
Half into a pint of ice cream.
Exactly. It's not for like 9 hours straight. So she doesn't have time to look at 30 pages of new arrivals, you know what I mean, on any single website. It's like for us, it's like we think that cadence of like delivering a couple of drops like twice a month of like, you know, anywhere from 20 to like 40 products each time is like a very reasonable amount to consume and a reasonable amount for our team to develop, to be honest, right? Like the human capital, going back to that kind of cost of like how much it takes to like actually be able to put out that much product. It's like, I think we've found like a formula that feels feasible, that also serves our business interest in terms of like keeping it exciting for the customer and like making sure that there's always something new for her to look at. But it isn't like an overwhelming amount. Either internally or
never
externally.
thought of that. Truly. And I love fashion and I travel for work and I want to always feel good and cute. But you're so right that when I sit down, if I've made decisions for my kids' lunches, and who I'm emailing and I just negotiated a contract, what I definitely don't want to do is go to the 7th page to find something that I love. And I never really thought about the fatigue
Yeah, it's more decision fatigue.
Yeah.
It's more decision fatigue. It's like too much to look at. You know what I mean? So I think that for us, like we're respecting our, like in our view, the reason why we kind of like came to the happy medium that we did is because we're trying to respect your time. Like at the end of the day, we know you want to see things that are new from us. You don't want to see the same old thing. Like we totally get that. And we're going to deliver that to you on a cadence that we think is digestible, that we also think is like executable and to do it well. Yeah. Meaning like not just like putting out 3,000 products just to put them out because that's the target that we were going to hit, but it's like our best 50 products. Like this is like the best, you know, we actually had made more, but we cut 25% of them because we're like, they weren't good enough. Like for us to like continue on like and offering it to you, like we couldn't get it there. Like we couldn't refine it there. So there is going to be some fallout from that. But that like what's left is like, you can trust is like been very well intentionally designed and like thought of and like put into the assortment beautifully. Like the team that does that for Modern Citizen, our merchandising and design teams, like they really are very thoughtful about like what every SKU represents in the assortment. It's all kill or no filler. Do you know what I mean? Like that's our approach.
It feels like, honestly, the site feels like a version of art, which I really appreciate because it does feel like you're walking into like I feel it's all about a feeling, right? Yeah. And I think maybe some founders may not understand how important that is. Yep. What do I feel right now? And what do I feel looking at this product page and going through each picture? And I think I've appreciated just in conversations that you've had with, you know, Leica and our co-founders, Priya and Pravanchi, is that you are protective. You're protective of the feeling people have when on the website, because I'm sure you feel that about walking into the brick and mortar. Like how are they experiencing what I built?
Yes. There's a lot of thought and intention.
It's a lot of thought and intention
that goes into it.
And so in a world where AI brands are a dime a dozen, I mean, not even just AI, like you can use a software, you can find where people are on your website, you can see what they're clicking, you can do this sign up unit and we can convert. I mean, there's the noise is everywhere. And I know you've taken a chance on Leica and had a POC, but you were thoughtful about that. You said, I want to do it this way to protect this integrity, but I care about not having bottlenecks. I care about my team being able to not be in the grunt work, but be able to story tell. Yep. So how can I lift that burden from them? I think that's almost like this human-centered AI approach, but how do you look at like tools like Leica that are trying to help you do what you're doing well and also maintain that protection of your like fierce personal protection of your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when you lose sight of that, that's like when it starts to become much more impersonal.
Yeah.
So I think that like, you know, we get pitched like all different types of tools, like everything from like marketing use cases to like finance to like whatever, like an AI is like kind of like infiltrating sort of every sector. And I think it is really easy to kind of like get very like lost in the sauce of that because there's just like so many different types of products. I think what I actually like the most about like Leica specifically actually was more like the customization because it isn't just doing AI for AI's sake. It's sort of like every brand has like its own kind of like model. Yeah. It was like the way kind of Priya explained it to me is that like the North Star, like of what they're marching toward, what they eventually want to build is that like every brand kind of has like their own specific guidelines about how they want to execute things. It isn't actually a one size fits all. And a lot of the tools that are out there are very one size fits all. It's like upload these 4 photos and we'll make a video for you. And like all the videos are going to look the same like as everybody else. And so I think the more and more that like becomes a sea of sameness. I think that is like the biggest worry creatively with like using AI is that like you're just going to end up with like everything that kind of like looks the same and like there is no like true like, you know, independent creativity anymore. So I like that about like in the sense that like you can as a brand like be very strict about like what that is and also how you use it. So thus far, you know, we're still early days like with the platform. Like we've primarily used it actually for like non-figure photography, which I think is interesting just because like, you know, that actually is a really big challenge with such a small team to be able to execute those types of creatives. Because you need a very specific skill set in terms of like how things like fold and like how they look when you're trying to shoot these kind of like assets. And so I think it is very helpful to like do it. Another thing that we've actually been doing has like been using a lot of like the output and creatives that we've like created with like not externally, but internally.
Oh, interesting.
As a way to actually explain our thoughts, because sometimes with like a creative team and often ones that are also remote, it's very hard to collaborate like on something creatively and like explain what you mean. So if like, let's say for example, like we're concepting a photo shoot that we want to do. And we're like, we think like a setting like this would look really interesting. And we think like this like type of like model would like be very interesting for this. And like how like the clothes interact with this environment, like would be interesting in this way.
Like a mood
I could
board.
Explain it. Yeah. I could explain it in a mood board and try to have you like visualize and piece those things together. Or I could like mock it up for you and like use an asset that like gives a sense for how it is. We're still going to do it. Like we're still going to go to the place and shoot it and with a physical person.
But you validated it.
But we validated kind of like how it should, like the vibe and how it should look, and got everybody else on board. Do you know what I mean? In terms of really clarity around what it's going to like execute into. And also challenge ourselves, because sometimes we're like, would that look good? Like we don't really know.
Or you see it and you're like,
actually, that's not it.
The subway's not it. You know,
yes, exactly. This environment isn't like quite right. So it's like we've actually used it internally too. And so not necessarily for like consumer consumption, but more just like as like a tool for our own creative like reflection.
I think, because again, kind of coming back to like the importance of that shared vision.
Yeah.
I could see as you scale and grow that someone maybe wants to get a bit more edgy, or someone wants to get more earthy. And having that visualization tool to say, should she be on a mountainside or in a subway?
Yeah.
Who is she? What does this satin top, where do we see this best? I love that concept of really, because it goes back to the feeling. You're able to target the right feeling.
Yes. And does it land
effectively?
Does it land? Exactly. You can kind of like look at it and really like just assess it on its merits. Again, instead of having to piece it together in your imagination and like to get two people on the same page about that, it's like you can like just react to it.
Right.
Like it's that.
And it's an authentic reaction.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can get that like visible, more tangible thing. And again, even if it's not for public consumption or like to ever use, it really is more of like a tool for like discussion internally.
Yeah. I mean, this is where I see maybe the near term, this might be a bit divisive, right? So maybe we're going to see like photo editorial shoots where like someone's wearing Gucci on the moon. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But, there might be people saying, well, she didn't go to the moon, and that's not art. And so I'm going to be really curious about the wave in which this is adopted depending on the brand, because you can imagine that true fast fashion or high SKU brands just need the help.
Yeah.
They quite literally don't have the human power.
Yeah.
They're not trying to protect those photos. They're not like in the minutia, right? Like we would be.
Yeah, it's a utility.
It's a utility.
More than anything else.
So I'm actually going to be curious at the way that AI is adopted in the retail space.
Yeah. And I think it will be used differently by different brands with different end goals. Do you know what I mean? And I think for us, like, because we're a boutique business, we're an independent business, like a team of like 15 people, like we're very tight knit, like, and our community of customers is kind of like the same way. Like we would treat it the same way. Like we would be like much more intentional, much more thoughtful. Like, yes, like we are a business like any other business. We do need to find ways to create leverage for ourselves as well too, because we also don't have the same budgets as like a lot of these like bigger brands who can do these like shoots, like not on the moon, but like somewhere close to the moon. Do you know what I mean? Like that they can do that. Like we couldn't even conceive of that because it's just something that's like totally out of our reach.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that like there isn't like leverage to be had there, but I think we have to be very thoughtful about how we do it, be very communicative about how we do it, like, and like the purpose and our reason for doing it.
Yeah.
I think that just like has to be clear, both internally and again, externally, not just like how you communicate to the customer, but also like the people who are then being tasked with doing it. Like what's their comfort level around that? Like what are the boundaries that are being set around like what are things that we are going to do and what we're not going to do? And for us, it just really starts with conversation.
Yeah.
We actually have like a small like functional team within our team that with like our responsibility team, and like we'll meet like every so often. We don't often have like a lot of issues that we're like talking about specifically. We did more like during COVID and things like that, but now a lot of it is like around like these questions.
Yeah,
like
or
what is our approach to AI?
inclusivity? Like
exactly.
representation. I can see those being.
Yeah, because actually
really
it's an unlock for a lot of brands.
Yeah.
Like for small brands, like trust me, I think every small brand that I know would love to shoot things on like 12 different sizes and like, be able to show it on every skin tone and like all those things. I would like love to do that.
I would love that.
Can't afford to do it.
Yeah.
Like we can barely afford the single sample that we have kind of thing. So I think that's
maybe
something
that is where AI can.
Yes, absolutely. And if you can do it responsibly and also just do it transparently. I think that's the other piece. I think where brands kind of get into trouble or what we've seen thus far is like when it's like, it's a little bit like it's obfuscated. That truth is obfuscated. I think when you're like more direct about it. And also again, it matches to the scale of your brand. Like if you're a business that's a huge business that could afford to do more in that space, then you kind of got to walk the walk too, and not solely look for the leverage. But if you're a small business and like you would like love to offer that to your customer, I think that's something that also is like it's worth like temperature testing and like understanding what that trade-off is, and then also just being honest about it. Yeah, because then hiding it I think is really like more where you kind of get a little bit more. Yeah, it's like a much dicier because then you kind of like almost like you're doing something wrong versus like if you're doing something because like it creates leverage for your business and like it's something that actually is like a better thing for the customer. You think you're actually offering a utility or a service to her, then just say what it is. Yeah, do you know what I mean? But like that's not easy. to come up with that language and understand how to actually communicate that in a way that the customer can understand is like not simple, which is part of the reason why we've moved very slow in that space too, because like you just want to be careful about how you're talking about it.
Yeah, it totally is like a one small move can take you back several steps.
Yep.
I think the brand shows how intentional the team is, that you have these meetings and the thoughtfulness is so apparent. I'm so curious how you're able, or how you've traversed that type of intentionality in a business and being a mom. Because and motherhood, like we've talked about before we're on air, is like, it's such a big, thoughtful, beautiful, draining job. And to do that alongside caring this much, it's like some people, like they choose, I'm going to care deeply about this, or I'm going to care deeply about this.
Right.
And you're really in it. So I'm curious how you've done that and how you've looked at motherhood in light of this.
Especially being a small business again, where like you just don't have the benefit of like scale where you can hire like a backfill for someone, or even like I think at this point my business partner and I have had 4 kids consecutively, like every year from 2019 through 2022 basically, just like kind of back to back. And like, I'll be honest, I don't actually think like when I give people advice, like more on the personal level of like how you combine like work and like family life, I don't actually think I thought about it that deeply. I always knew I wanted kids.
Like existed.
Well, I always knew I wanted kids. And I'm like kind of glad I didn't think about it that deeply, because I think if I did, I would have delayed it. Yes. I would have thought like, well, I can't.
If we knew what we knew.
Yes, exactly. Like I can't do this like alongside this, because it is a lot. It's a lot to carry.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of glad I had that naivete almost like going into it, because it didn't then like push out that dream. Do you know what I mean? I think I would have also regretted it if I had like allowed entrepreneurship to basically like make it so that I couldn't be a mom, because like I just felt like I couldn't like kind of like take it. So I think that that's something that I'm kind of grateful for, that like naivete a little bit, because it's like I just like kind of did it because it was like the right time in my personal life to do it, and the right time for my husband and I. And then I got into like the real shit of what it is, which is basically like, it's a lot. I had prepartum depression. I had postpartum depression with my first son. I didn't even know prepartum depression was like a thing that you could be. And I had never been depressed before. So I didn't even know I was depressed actually. For like a while.
Yeah.
It really took me like going to therapy to realize like, oh, like, yeah, I am seeing like less joy in things. And I am like, kind of like, I'm like, oh, I'm like
now that you asked,
clinically,
I have
like
cried twice today.
Exactly. About like this, whatever, you know what I mean? So I think like that's something that like, I think actually what helps now is like going back to that vulnerability of like being vulnerable about that. I think that's actually what I love sharing with most founders, especially like other moms who are kind of doing a similar thing, is that like we're all carrying and holding the same things. And the more that we can all be honest about that, the less alone you feel. And that takes away like 50% of the burden. Just like feeling like you're not like alone doing that. Someone else is doing it and like they're getting through it. Like that's inspiration for me to kind of keep pushing and moving forward too. And also just recognizing that at the end of the day, no one asked me to start this business. Like, let's be clear. This isn't like, you know what I mean? Like someone forced me into this job. Like I chose it for the autonomy it offers, but also like the deep responsibility too, in the sense that like you are never off. Right. So like, yes, I do get to like maybe organize my day in a way that's a little bit more flexible than somebody who has to be at like a desk job and like be there like just to put in like physical like FaceTime.
Right.
But I also work until like, 11 p.m. every night after putting my kids to bed and on the weekends. And I've never taken a vacation without my computer. I actually I didn't even put like an out of office message. Like,
what are those?
Yeah. And I didn't have maternity leave. There's no leave. I was like typing on my computer or like sending emails from my phone, like as I was being sewn up in the hospital after delivering my first one.
Jess, that is so
I know, which
gnarly.
actually is dumb. I would say like in hindsight now, I would not do that again.
Say, like you wouldn't, I know that you wouldn't say, go do that.
No,
that's the best.
Absolutely not. No. Because actually that's like, that actually sinks you down further and makes it harder for you to get back out of that. So now with like the wisdom, again, like going back, I still didn't really take a maternity leave with my second one, like a shorter one. I was probably like a month or so versus like 2 hours. But like, I wouldn't do that again, actually. And the reason I say that is because I think my number one advice to people who are trying to juggle both is like learning how to resource yourself. Meaning like, you can't give from an empty cup, right? Like I think that was like put your oxygen mask on first, right? Like it's like, that's really real. And I think for a lot of women, especially like women of color, like, and women in general, honestly, in our society who have been conditioned, socialized, like in a culture to be sacrificing. Constantly. That is your job as a mother to like just constantly sacrifice. And it kind of is. Like I'm not saying that it's not.
Yeah,
but
there's
also,
a thread of that.
Yes, there is like a thread of like there's definitely a truth in that. And it is definitely how we've been conditioned to behave sort of thing. But I think also it's like recognizing that you are a person, you have like needs as well. And like you can actually better serve other people's needs when like, you are also served.
Yeah.
So I try now to be very conscious of like being resourced. And by that I mean
asking for help.
Yes. Finding help, you know what I mean? Asking for help, not being afraid to ask for help, sharing, that burden kind of like with other people, whether that's literally just like getting it emotionally off your chest and like venting to a friend and like kind of sharing in that kind of like shared experience. It also is like making time for things that like energize you. So I do like this thing, on my calendar, which I'm like very militant about my calendar because actually like I've also lost a lot of like memory like after having kids. So I'm like, it's hard for me to remember things. So if like it's not in the calendar, it's like not happening.
It does not
so I'm like, I have like a block for showering. Like it's like down to that level because I'm like, if I don't put, it's not on the calendar, it's like not gonna happen. So it has to be on there. And so
remind me off air to ask a couple other things.
Yes, yeah. But my strategy and my goal, what I would do with my calendar is I actually like separate out work. It's color coded. Work items, things for the family, and then things for myself personally. And I do that because I want to kind of strike this balance of like, like family is getting like 40% of my attention. Work is getting 40%
nice to
of
see
my
a
attention.
visual. I never really thought about it. Because if you're seeing the colors, you can be like, wow, it's a work week.
Yes, exactly. Wow. You're like, exactly. That's exactly the reason you use it is because you have to just like, and every week it can change, by the way. Because like, I don't think that there's like this perfect formula. I don't think it's never always 40,
it might
40,
be an 80-20 kind of life.
Exactly. Where it's kind of like, you have this intention you set out for either this week or this day or even like this month, right? Where I'm like, it is going to be like a family heavy month or it's going to be like a work heavy month. And I know I'm going to have to sacrifice like more like resourcing that I would spend that time personally for myself.
Right.
I think that like my bucket used to be 50-50. It was like family and work. And then I realized I need to have a personal bucket too, because like that personal bucket feeds the other things.
Right.
So I like on balance, I think probably am about like 40-40-20, like work, family, and like personal things. But then there are some times where I have to increase, like maybe today I need to take like 3 hours to do something that like I need to get out of like done for my personal life to like feel whole and satisfied. And then like, again, on balance, like, is your intention reflected in what you're doing?
Yeah.
Because ultimately there's no perfect formula for anyone and we all shouldn't ascribe to the same formula. It's like more like what works for you and find that equilibrium. So if you find yourself basically burned out constantly, your formula probably isn't working.
Yeah.
Right. And you need to like increase something somewhere, you know what I mean? To kind of like make that work for you better. It's just that self-awareness. So I actually had to do the color coding really just to be more self-aware.
Yeah.
Because I think I wasn't like reflecting correctly. Like I was like remembering things incorrectly, you know what I mean? Of like how things were actually going down. And then I was like looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is actually objective data. I spent like all of my time, like 60 hours this week, like on work. No wonder I feel burned out.
Yeah.
Like, of course I feel burned out. Like that should be obvious.
It would quiet the resentment a little. If I'm like,
going into it. Like,
this is what it's going to be.
Yeah. But the next week,
the next week
could be different.
The blue's going to be popping on my calendar for self-care.
Exactly. Totally. Just to get yourself reset back to like, again, a liquid. So it's just being more self-aware of that and like being able to then resource yourself against that. And the resourcing can be as simple as like, I need to take a walk. Yeah. I need to like call my friend while I'm taking a walk, 2 birds, 1 stone. So I'm getting some exercise, but I'm also like catching up with someone, you know what I mean? Like being efficient about how you're doing it. But like, it could be like just getting your nails done. Just like things like I have a short list of things that I have like written down that I know give me joy and like bring me energy. And I just like look at that list and I'm like, what can I squeeze in? If I only have 30 minutes or whatever to like fit into my calendar for something personal, like what am I going to squeeze in to like make that work? And like that helps.
I have to believe there's an overlap between the rigor you had to have to build a business. It takes extreme organization and prioritization. And it's almost like the business taught you how to do it in your personal life rather than vice versa. It wasn't like you, like it almost,
actually, yes, I would say that that's very true.
And I think that's quite unique because some people are just rigorous type A people, but they could never translate that to a business. And it's almost like you did that in a business and then you were like, that worked there. This applies. Yeah, and I think that's really cool. And also like putting motherhood in there. And
well, motherhood, I think also was the impetus because like before motherhood, I would say that like if I had to look at my calendar, I was probably wasting a lot of time.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. Like there was like a lot of time that was like wasted doing things that were neither helping me personally nor helping the business.
Right. What color is that?
Yeah, it's like a red of things to do. Do you mean just like ether stuff?
Yeah.
And a mentor of mine, Carol, from Opening Ceremony, she had said to me, she's like, when you become a mom, this is like when I was pregnant and kind of like talking to her, like getting her advice about like how to like do both. Cause she had also like obviously owned and run a business and been a founder and had kids. She was like, being a mom gives you so much clarity on what is a priority versus not.
Right.
You learn to manage your time. Like your time just isn't free anymore because there's so much at stake. There's so much that you could be doing with your time that you could be doing for your family. So anytime you are spending on work needs to be like very clear eyes. Yeah. Like, what is the purpose of this? You're not just like waxing poetic. So I think like
that's a gift though.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think I would have had that without motherhood, actually. Right. Like the ability to like ruthlessly prioritize, like what is the most important thing that's going to move the needle today?
Right.
And also how much time do I need to do it?
Right.
I think that's something that like I became a lot more aware of like time and like how much of exactly how efficient I needed to be about certain things and like how I could kind of like kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You just like, it forces you to be like ruthlessly prioritize those things because like you want to spend your time with your family. Like you don't want to like sacrifice that either.
Like how many Lego sets do we need to build before? Like truly. No, I totally agree. But I love my friend. I'm so excited for my friends to have kids that haven't yet, but it is funny the tone of I only have an hour to do this versus me being like, I have an hour to do this.
Yes.
Like that shift in your life is.
Yeah, you become so much more efficient.
Yes,
you can do 10 things at once.
Are you? I am a star. I'm a queen. I got this.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think I was highly overstimulated easily before kids, and now my threshold. Our kids could be running in circles around us, and I bet we wouldn't. Yeah, we'd have skip a beat. You know, like it would just. And I think that's such a cool thing to apply to business and to career.
Oh yeah, it's how much you can hold.
That threshold.
How much you can hold, like the amount that you can hold now, like after having been a mom and been through pregnancy and been through like that while like building something. It's like
postpartum,
your resilience. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. If you have something like that happens to you too, it's like your level of resilience, your level of self-awareness, your ability to be efficient, your ability to kind of like cut through like all the bullshit. It's like you know, it's just like it's like a superpower.
It is a superpower.
And also I think one that actually for me like was born from like fatigue. It like literally was just like I like was so exhausted and also like depressed at that time. I couldn't do that many things. And so for me it like was almost like a wake up call. You know what I mean? Of like
you have literally had to.
You have to not only prioritize, but you also have to like be very like clear about like what your intention is. Also what success is to you, to kind of go back to like just building something. Like I think like your North Star and definition of success is like the only thing that can sustainably keep you going. You know, if your metric of success is like what your board is going to say or like whatever, you know, XYZ, which I get in a lot of businesses, like that is like the reality because like you know, you took money or like, you know, whatever it is, like there are these trade-offs. I think for us, like our North Star has always just been like a culture of excellence. Like we want to do things excellently. We want to do them like the right way. Even if that means that we're not going to grow as fast as like X, Y, or Z kind of thing, or we're going to like make this choice to do something like differently, kind of go against the grain a little bit. I think that for me, like success is like by my own metric of what that means. It's not somebody else's metric. And so that to me is like ultimately the most sustainable thing that you can do for a business in terms of it feeling like a marathon, not a sprint. You know, like it's like that if your North Star is like your definition of success and you kind of just march toward that, then like you can do it like endlessly versus like getting burned out quickly.
It's quite a, under talked about skill to quiet the competitive noise.
Yes.
It's such a thing that's just kind of flashing in your periphery at all times. And I think if you can hold yourself to a high agency life that you're going to default to action and you're not going to get lost in the people screaming from the cheap seats. I think that is ultimately like not even just in a business, like I'm sure that's how we want to parent. I'm sure that's how we want to like,
but you can sleep at night.
Yeah. You can sleep at night.
Yeah. You're not like in disconcert with like, there's no like dissonance there in terms of like what, again, like your measure of success, your North Star is like why you're doing something. Ultimately, like why are you doing it? Right. Because it is like a grind. Even in the best moments, it's a grind, you know, because like there's always like a, you know, tariffs gate, like something around the corner, COVID, like whatever it is, there's always going to be something. And so I think like entrepreneurs will also can do that in a sustained way over time. You build that muscle, you know, or now like, you know, my business partner and I like laugh or like, you know, COVID was pretty bad. Like I can't lie. Like that was like a really, really tough period. But then like when tariffs happened and all these other things, we're like, well, I guess we got like a list of like 10 more things that we originally weren't planning on doing, but like, can we do them? Sure. You know, we've just weathered so much. So you build that sort of like muscle. And actually, ironically, so we've been doing this for 10 years. It's like, I like said to her like the other day, like, I'm like, we've just got good at this. You know, it's like actually like now that like it's like 10 years in, like while I know a lot of people could feel a lot of fatigue around that, it's like we should be really proud because like we really like now like know what we're doing. You know what I mean? And we can like have
with
that sort of
with such a conviction too. Like it's such a solid foundation. Which again, it so shows. I know we're at time. I want people to know where they can shop Modern Citizen.
So we're really excited that last year we kind of reopened stores for the first time. We actually had stores before COVID, but we had to close all of them, obviously, just because it was like not the time to kind of like be in person. So we opened our first store again in Soho in New York, 251 Center Street, the center between Broome and Grand in Soho. That opened in September of last year. So that's been exciting to have that store for a year. And then we just opened in San Francisco, also in Pacific Heights, just off Fillmore Street. In Sacramento and Fillmore in April of this year. So but kind of being in our two like largest markets. We started in San Francisco and we obviously have like a very like large customer base in New York. And so those are kind of like our two hubs. And then obviously on our .com as well. So moderncitizen.com.
Yay. Yeah. This was so fun. I honestly just,
the time.
Like how the time just flew by. Like that makes me feel so good. But yeah, I know like we were strangers a little bit ago, but I'm like really proud of you. And it just feels worth saying. Like, it's just like, it's really cool to watch you thrive. And I think it's inspiring and yeah, I just feel like so many people can take so many nuggets out of what you've learned and moved through. So
Yeah.
thank you for this.
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate you.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah.